Hello once again and welcome to tutorial number 18. Okay, so with the animation now complete, it's just a case of putting a few finishing touches. As I previously mentioned, we'll add some sound effects to this now, and it's going to be pretty simple stuff. Sound effects I think are a matter of personal taste, but all I've done is thrown a few things together in Logic Pro and then added them in here. If you don't have Logic Pro, GarageBand or something similar, plenty of places out there where you can get sound bites in either WAV or audio interchange file format. Either of those work perfectly well with Cinema 4D. So have a search around and see what you can come up with. But anyway, I'll bring in the sounds that I've created and then we'll see where we're going to put those and how they're going to work out. Right then, so let's begin. The first thing that we're going to need to do here, we need to return to our second expression that we've created for SID here. And initially we need to get a couple of compares. So I'll bring those in. And they need to go down here. And what we're doing, we're going to ask in our first compare, are we greater than, so we'll change the function, greater than 0 at input 2. And what we're actually going to compare is the frames. So we're going to take our frame output there from the time node, plumb that in there. So effectively our first question is the timeline running? In the second one, again we're going to be comparing the frames, and on this occasion we're going to say, are we greater than 4? And the reason for this we'll see in a minute. So we'll just leave those there. The next thing to do is get a couple of sound nodes. So we'll bring those in. Got those two there. And we'll say play at the input there. Plumb these two in. So in our first sound here, we'll come over to our file name property and we'll click on the button over here. And I've set up a folder in Logic Pro here for the snake race effects. And the first sound effect I'm going to reach for in here is a gunshot, or starting pistol to give it perhaps a more apt description. So we're going to use that one first to begin the race. So now it must be quite obvious why we've set that up as we have. So once the frames are greater than 0, obviously the race has started, so we need to play the starting gun. Now I need a delay of 4 frames between the starting gun and the next sound effect, which is and they're off. That was me. I just sampled that myself into Logic Pro and used that particular sound effect there. We'll bring that one in. And they're off. That's the one we want. And we've got that there. That's our first 2 sound effects complete there. Before we finish with this particular expression for SID here, there is just one more sound effect that we need to add to it. So we'll move on with that now. And on this occasion, we're going to check. We need another compare actually. So we'll bring the compare in. And we're going to take a feed from the range mapper here into input 1, and we're going to say, are we greater than 0.83? So that's what we're looking at there. And we know that our ranges are between 0 and 1 at both the input and output stages on this occasion. So once we get to very, very close to the end of the race, because obviously this is being used to make our spline wraps offset count from 0 to 1, which is creating the motion of the snake. So once we get to the end of that and the snakes begin skidding to a halt, what we're going to want to do then is play that particular sound effect. We'll get the sound node for that. Put play in there. And once again go to our file name over here and grab a hold of skid. And now that's in there. The first 2 sounds, remembering that this is SID's expression, we don't need to repeat these for all the other snakes. because obviously we only want these at the beginning of the race. Once they're done once, that's fine. But we do need to repeat this for the remaining snakes. So we've done Sid, we've got to do exactly the same thing now in Nancy, Bonnie, Clyde and Dave. So what I'm going to do, quick pause, I'll get those sorted out and then we'll look at the remaining sound effects and where we've got to put those. And that completes all of the copying that needs to be done. The remaining snakes now have their sounds in there, their skid sounds in there. Moving on from here, we'll open this expression up. Now we've got a few sound effects to go in here, 3 to be precise. What we've got to do first, with the slither keeper here, when this compare is greater than or equal to, well, it's 1 currently, but ultimately of course it's going to be 10 because we're doing it over the best of 10 slithers. So once we've got to the best of 10, what we're going to do then is trigger the banners coming out of the top of the scoreboard at that particular time. And as I've said to you earlier, they're like an old cash register, sort of the indicators from an old cash register leaping up out of the machine there. And that's the sound that we're going to use. So we're going to use a ka-ching type sound for that. Let's bring in a sound node. Set it up to play. And then grab a hold of the ka-ching sound effect that I've got here. So I've got that one. That's that in place and taken care of. We next need to move down here. This is Sid's position indication, where the text leaps up and indicates the position of each snake at the end of the race. We've got to put an effect in for that, like a whoosh as the text leaps up. We need to bring that in pretty much. No, actually, we don't need that now. We can bring it in a bit later. This particular sound here is going to be like a ping sort of effect from an electronic cash register, a more modern cash register, for when the scores and slither number are tallied up at the end of each race. That's what we need to bring in next. Once again, grab a sound node. Just place it up here for now. Play and grab a hold of ping, and that's in there. Finally, I'll just copy this sound node across. What I need in here is the whoosh sound for the text that indicates the snake's position. So I'll grab that into there. And then this will be triggered. I'm just going to move over to here, zoom out a little, and I'll bring this over here. Take it down to near the time node, because what it's actually going to be triggered by will be the output from this initial compare here. I'm going to need to repeat this 5 times. So what I'm going to, well, actually what I'll do, I'll move up here, frame selected, so that gives us a bit of a chance. What I'll do, I'll copy this so that I've got another 4. Plumb that one into the first one there. So that's Sid's whoosh sound. Nancy's, Bonnie's, Clyde's, and finally Dave's. So once the snakes have reached the end of each race and the text has been triggered, that's when we want the whoosh sound to play. I mean, I could just leave all of those sound nodes there, but for the sake of tidiness, I normally put them under the snakes because they do relate to that part of the expression. What I'll do for now, though, is I'll just I'll pause just briefly. I'll put them in place, and then we'll start again with the next part of the expression. Welcome back once again, and now we have our sound nodes positioned where I feel they need to go. Just place them under the results here for each snake. So we've got Sid there, Nancy down here, don't want that, Nancy down here, and etc. for the other snakes. I felt that that's the best thing to do because they are triggered at this point, so it makes sense to place them here, even though I could have left them at the beginning of the expression. It's just for the sake of clarity once again. Okay, so that completes that little part of it. We'll move on to our final expression down here for the scoreboard, and it brings us to our last sound effect of all, actually, which is simply going to be a servo motor type sound that I've used for when the arrows actually fly up out of the base of the scoreboard. They're going to be triggered by the output of this condition, because obviously sounds are triggered by a true output from either a condition or a compare, or well, even a switch. It could be anything really. Anything that outputs a number 1 is going to trigger the sound effect. So it makes sense to put it here, because obviously if there's been an overall winner, we're going to get a true result. If not, but there has been an absolute slither, a true result will snake its way through here and out of here. And the same is true for all of the other different checks here. So they all produce the same result. So if we do get down to here and there has been a two-way dead slither, once again, as I say, a 1 is going to snake through these compares or conditions here until it arrives at the output here. So that's obviously the place where we need to place our sound node, just after this condition. So that's exactly what we're going to do. So we'll do Sid, sound there, take a feed from here, play, and then go and get our sound effect, which is going to be servo. Okay, so that's fine. Exactly the same process has got to be repeated for the other snakes, so we can drag that down for Nancy there. Plug that in there. Bonnie, might as well do these actually. Clyde. And finally, Dave. And that completes it. That's all the sound effects in place. That's as much as we need to do with the Expresso. So let's close this up and see what we now have. But first, what I've done as another little piece of it, let's just zoom out a bit here. With my slither number keeper here, in this compare, and I'll just zoom her in now on this a little bit more so we can see. So on this compare node, we did formerly have, if I move that, we formerly had equal to 1 in there. I've raised it to 2 because I've allowed 2 races here instead of just 1. I'll go into the null as well, and in here I've done exactly the same thing with the score or the slither keeper number here. I've said if it's greater than or equal to 2 instead of 1, so that allows us 2 races instead of just a single race. It makes it easier just to show you that the sound effects are all correct. So if I play now,
and they're off.
okay, you heard the ping there when it totaled up the scores and the slither number. And now if I go back to the beginning,
and they're off.
We play our second race. Everything works fine. You could hear there, I just wanted to do 2 races because the ping does actually get masked a little bit by the ka-ching sound as the banner leaps out of the top of the scoreboard there. And you heard the servos when the arrows leapt up there. And of course, our nice whoosh sound from the indicators there, the position indicator text.
And they're off.
And there you have it.
And they're off.
Perfect. Okay, and that's the sound effects for it. The only sound effect I didn't perhaps do is one that could have covered the snakes slithering across the screen there. But maybe there's a challenge there for you. If you're a bit musical, maybe you could come up with a very, very tiny piece of music for that. I mean, that's quite a challenge in itself, coming up with something short enough. But, you know, if you can find something that fits, then by all means, add it in. You know, why not? Get something that will cover that lasts long enough, and then trigger it just after the race has started. That would work fine, but really, for what I'm doing here, it's just an example of what can possibly be done with sound. I mean, I'm not going into it in any great depth. It's just literally a case of, yeah, we can do sound in Cinema 4D, and this is how we do it, and this is what might be possible. And that's exactly what I've done there. But anyway, that just about brings us to the end of our tutorial. So, hope you've enjoyed this one and that it's given you further insight into what you can do. And I'll see you in the next one, where we'll make a few adjustments to the display and how that goes about putting the scores on the board. I'll tell you the objective when we get there. But that's essentially what we're going to be doing in tutorial number 19. So I'll see you there very, very soon.